Right, let's go to the other issue of the weekend, those vehicle standards. Chris Bowen back on his green energy bandwagon. Now, he claims this is all about choice for consumers. He says it'll actually make your motoring cheaper. Well, come on, you said you'd make our power cheaper with renewables, and we know how that turned out last time. To get into the detail now, I'm joined by veteran motoring journalist Paul Gover. Paul, great to have you back on the program. Give us an understanding of this energy standard. And look, how on earth is this supposed to save the motorist $1,000 each?
Well, taking the second point first, it won't and it can't. Anytime they change anything on new cars, it costs more money. So basically, the energy standard is a standard that's been in effect in Europe for some time. There are a number of emission levels. It just brings us into line with a more recent standard, not something that's proposed for the future. What Minister Bowen has completely forgotten about is that the reason we couldn't have this standard up until now has got nothing to do with electric cars. It's got to do with the fact that the fuel in Australia is not suitable for use with those European latest emission standards. The cars simply don't run properly on it. So which came first, the fuel or the announcement? Well, it's got to be the fuel first, because you can't change the emission standards for these vehicles without the correct fuel.
What about the point that Australians, and we talked about this when you were last on, certainly we're seeing it out of the United States, but people are not buying electric vehicles. I mean, for all the hype, the early adopters are there, people with plenty of Tesla cash in their pocket are there, but the vast bulk of Australians are not purchasing them. They made up, well, 7.2%, I'm told, of new car sales last year. What happens here if we're being pushed towards a vehicle we don't want and we don't buy it? We're not going to see a saving here.
No, and the other thing is, this isn't about getting people to buy it. The vast majority of Australians don't want an electric car. Most of them also can't afford an electric car. The sort of people that he's trying to convince with all of this sort of stuff, they can't afford any sort of new car. So saying you're going to save $1,000 when you buy a new car, that's great. The vast majority of Australians are going to hang on to what they've got, or they're moving into a second-hand car, not necessarily new cars. The thing about this is,
and Paul,
electric cars.
So let me just jump in to remind people what we are buying. Remind people what we're buying, because we're actually getting bigger in our vehicle choices, not smaller, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So the pickup trucks, I don't call them utes because they're not based on the Falcon and Commodore anymore, but the vast majority of Australians want a pickup truck. They want a Toyota Hilux or a Ford Ranger. And the fact is, they're outselling traditional passenger cars. Passenger cars are just about dead in Australia because the people who are not buying pickups are buying big SUVs, big family vans. Now, these things are heavier and are worse for the environment in all sorts of ways. So we're just jumping around the edges. Now, there are electric cars out there that will do some of the functions of an SUV, but they're more expensive than buying a combustion engine car. And right at the minute, there's only one electric pickup truck available in Australia. You talk about sales, guess what happened last year? 87 was the total number of sales for the LDV electric pickup truck in Australia last year.
Good Lord, it didn't even crack the ton. Hey, just quickly, I mean, if Australians aren't buying these cars, Chris Bowen says it's going to save us $1,000. We both dispute that, as do the experts. But I listened to the Federal Chamber of Automotive out there today. They're saying, well, if we're going to make this sort of saving, Minister, put the modelling out there, because he hasn't even put the modelling out there in the public domain so that experts like you and others can scrutinise it. Does that surprise you? Because that says to me, coming out of politics, that something's crook if they don't put the modelling out there.
I would suggest there is no modelling. This is just a number he's plucked out of the air somewhere, a bit like an episode of one of those TV shows about what's the ka-ching number that's going to get people to pay attention. And I think the other thing about this is you can legislate all you like in a country like Australia that we should be driving these sort of cars, but buyers don't want them. They're not buying them, and they show no signs of buying them anytime in the future.
Paul Gover, so much common sense. Thank you very much for unpacking the sort of Bowenisms we've been copying for the last 24 hours. Thanks for your time.